Welcome to Popternative, where we dive into topical discussions from the worlds of pop culture, social media, and sports. Here is your host, Peter Remoliotis, aka PD Beats.
Hello and welcome to the Popternative podcast. This is the podcast where we have digital discussions from the worlds of social media, pop culture, and sometimes even sports. As always, I'm your host, Peter Remoliotis, and on Twitter I go as PD Beats. I'm really looking forward to this episode. We have a pretty cool guest. A couple of weeks ago, we had our first director on the show, and Robert Lieberman, and we have a director on the show tonight. He is currently the director of a movie coming out called Justice. We're with Richard Gabai. Richard, welcome to the show. Welcome to Popternative.
Thank you so much, Peter. Happy to be here.
No, we're happy to have you. Congrats on the film. Talk a little bit about it and talk about what people can expect from Justice.
Well, Justice is a modern, good old-fashioned Western. You know, I wanted to make a Western since I started making movies, and this is actually, I think Justice actually is my 25th feature film as a director. And so when I got the opportunity to make a Western, I really jumped at the chance. I actually came onto the project, I think 5 weeks before we started shooting. And it was a joy from beginning to end. You know, a fantastic cast, wonderful locations and crew out there in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and very blessed that we were, once the film was finished, it was picked up by Universal. So we had a little theatrical run, and we're out on VOD, and on October 17th, we hit Blu-ray. So that's a pretty successful story for a little independent film, and definitely proud of it. You know, it takes place right after the Civil War in Nevada, and you know, a band of bad guys are trying to reignite the Civil War. So as kind of a historic fiction that it is, it's extremely relevant to everything that's going on today as well. So I think you know, people that are fans of old-fashioned westerns that, you know, love films by John Wayne, by, you know, John Ford and all the greats, are going to enjoy this film. And I think that, you know, the younger generation is going to dig it as well, especially because of our cast with Jackson Rathbone and Nathan Parsons and Jamie-Lynn Sigler. Got a really kind of cool cast. And
Stephen Lang, who was just in Don't Breathe.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Stephen Lang, who was
Stephen Lang is, forget about it. Stephen Lang is the best guy in the business, the best bad guy in the business, and he was just a dream to work with.
Yeah.
We call him Slang. He likes to be called Slang. Even on the call sheet, it says Slang, and he is just the coolest guy, and he is just a badass in this film.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was really cool to be able to have him in your movie, I guess, from a lot of what he's done in the past.
Oh, yeah.
And including Don't Breathe, which I think was a huge hit.
Yeah, Don't Breathe was a huge hit, and that came out, I guess that came out last Halloween. Mm-hmm. But, yeah. I mean, that was, he's definitely key, just because he's so well known from Avatar, and then the westerns that he's done, and of course Don't Breathe, which was one of the top grossing films of the year last year. And as great as he was in Don't Breathe, which he was freaking great, I was thrilled by his performance in this, and it was really a great joy to work with him. And you know, it could be a little bit intimidating, you know, a guy like me who's kind of a journeyman director working with a really, really fine actor, and we got on great. And had a really great time making that character come to life.
No, that's great. It's also good to hear that there's such passion coming out of your mouth about the actors on set and on the movie, and I think that's a really cool thing too. When obviously the director has to connect with the stars of the movie, but it's just great to hear how supportive and passionate you are of the cast, and I think I really get that from you.
Oh yeah, well, you know, film is the most collaborative art. It's nobody can make a movie by themselves, and I think a lot of credit and a lot of blame gets directed maybe towards the director, and he doesn't deserve half of the blame he gets, and he doesn't deserve half of the credit either.
Yeah, because when you think of a film, you sometimes like even the writer kind of gets left in the shadows, and you go directly to the director.
Absolutely. Writers often get left out in the cold. I always make a great point of thanking the writers and being grateful to the writers of anything that I've worked on. And you're absolutely right that an actor will say a great line, and he didn't write that line.
Yeah.
But sometimes he did. Sometimes it's magic that happens on set. But more often than not, a writer wrote it, and a cinematographer shot it, and a director, said action. But this was definitely the most fun I've had making on a film since the very beginning. In the beginning of my career, when I was also focused on my acting career, I was kind of starring in these teen comedies that I made with my friends, and that was an incredible, exciting time in my life. And then it sort of became more what I enjoyed but did for a living. But when I got to make this Western, and there were all those horses and that great Western town, Bonanza Creek Ranch out in Santa Fe, New Mexico, it was pretty much nothing but fun, really.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. And yeah, you mentioned like the cast. Like, I mean, how does one like? I wanted to ask you this too. I mean, like you mentioned, and that was my next question. Like when you were talking about the film, and you mentioned your cast. That's why I jumped in and said Stephen Lang, because I was gonna bring that up, right? But you have Jamie-Lynn Sigler, you have Jason Rathbone. I mean, Sopranos, Entourage, Twilight, Don't Breathe, Avatar. You have a cast that has been on such amazing, like, big productions and big features, and right. They're doing more of like an indie film with Justice. So, do you think, like, kind of, is there? I'm just curious. This might be maybe a dumb question, but do you find for them there's a big difference when they're making it in terms of how they're prepping for a role, because it's kind of like an indie film, or it's like a different perspective, or is it kind of the same thing? They're going to work and they're honing their craft.
Well, I think it's I think their craft is their craft, and the great news was all of the actors in the film gave it their all. It wasn't because it was a smaller film. It wasn't like they were giving it a half an effort. Everyone. Oh, absolutely. Everyone was all in, and I if there is any difference, I've been around some bigger projects, but I don't know. It's especially, first of all, most of us that are lucky enough to make a living making motion pictures and making entertainment, we should be grateful enough to give it our best every time.
Absolutely.
And I am, and everyone who was working with me on this project. I mean, I had the support of great producers, Tony Perez and Nico Foster, and my cinematographer has really been my right-hand man on I think 9 films in the last 5 years, Scott Peck, and he brought his best game, and really, happy with the results, really happy with the results. And to go back to the actors, they brought it their all. I think they were all excited to be in a Western. I mean, it's not something that you get to call for every day.
Oh, yeah.
Especially Jamie is kind of seen as, she's usually playing the New York girl. They see her as like the Italian or, the Jewish girl from New York or whatever. And here she was kind of playing a Midwestern, grew up on a ranch girl. So it was a great opportunity for her. And she really dug in.
And I find it interesting because, one could make an argument that, like a Western movie in today's age is a little bit more rare. There's not as much Western movies out there. But if you shift more towards like television, and you can see that the Western's getting is kind of getting revamped, and it's kind of getting a lot more exposure with shows like Justified, Hell on Wheels, even Westworld, right? Like, I just find that really interesting where that's coming back. Did you kind of see good timing to kind of have put together a Western like Justice because of like shows like that, or did that not come to mind?
It was good timing. I think it is good timing, and I think you make a great point. Those modern day Western type shows are definitely there. And then we had the the huge Western with Denzel Washington, the remake of come on now, one of the biggest movies of the year last year was a Western. The remake of all right, I'm going to get kicked out of the Directors Guild for not being able to name this movie on the spot, but I really loved it. It was a great picture. But the punchline is, yeah, I think the timing is kind of right. One of the things we've learned, though, is that there's always a built-in audience for Westerns. I think you kind of mentioned in the small pre-interview we had that like your folks were looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people that are always looking for a Western. You know?
Magnificent Seven.
Magnificent Seven, correct.
Because Chris Pratt was also in that as well. And it's really cool to see. But it's really cool to see big stars doing these Western movies, like Injustice as well. I mean, first thing that came to mind is, we talked about him already, but Stephen Lang, because of his groundbreaking performance in Don't Breathe, because I think that's probably one of the coolest movies I've ever seen. So kind of to see him... I mean, it's a great time for horror movies. Like, we just had... Rachel Matthews, she's an actress. She was in Happy Death Day that just came out. And it's
huge.
Yeah, #1 in the box office. I think it's a good time for horror movies, westerns, kind of those type, because you also have like Netflix that
people want to go to the movies to escape.
Yep.
And have a good time. You know,
westerns do that. It's a good time, a western.
When I want to go to the movies, I want to have a good time. I don't want to come out, more depressed or more. I want to have fun. So I want to have excitement, or I want to laugh, or I want to get scared. I want to feel.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that comes back to the classic genres, horror, western, thriller, action.
Speaking of depressing, have you seen Manchester by the Sea?
I have. And
you just thought, because you just said, like, I don't want to come out of the movie theater depressed. That came in my mind right away, and that's probably the most, although it's an amazing movie, but it's one of the most depressing things. One of the most
wonderfully crafted and acted films ever.
But like one of the most depressing movie.
I don't want to watch it again.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, unbelievable.
But a lot of the studios, and they're making a lot of great movies too. Like last year I really loved. Oh man, I'm drawing blanks left and right here. But the NASA movie about the computers, Hidden Figures.
Yeah. Oh, that was great.
A lot of inspiring, great movies being made by the studios. But we're really excited about Justice, and I'm glad. It was for me a bucket list item was to have the Universal logo at the head of one of my movies. So the fact that happened is really, really cool. And it's nice to have some muscle behind the release, because it's available everywhere digitally, and I know that the Blu-ray is going to be everywhere as well.
Mm-hmm. I have another question for you. You were also the director of a movie called Insight, which
yes,
came out in, I believe, 2011 or 2012?
Right around there.
Yes, and my question to that is, you had a lot of people in that movie, because that's kind of like that's a serious film. That's that's not like a funny film, but you had people in that movie that have been in funny movies. Like you had Thomas Ian Nichols from the American Pie movies and Rookie of the Year, and you also had of course the legend Christopher Lloyd, who were in a lot of comedies, right? So as a director, I just find it interesting. How is it going from working with actors or even writers or cinematographers that are used to doing one genre and then working on another project with them, and it's a completely different genre that you're kind of used to seeing, even though they'll dabble here and there. I find that really interesting.
Well, cool. Yeah. Look, myself, my career started out by acting in, genre comedies and TNA comedies, Assault of the Party Nerds and Virgin High and Dinosaur Island. And here I am now a bunch of years later directing a serious thriller like Insight. And, good actors tend to be good actors. And some of the greatest dramatic performances have often been turned in by comedic actors like, Jerry Lewis and classic guys like that. But as far as Thomas Nicholas and Chris Lloyd, they're just good actors, and they're both friends of mine. Insight is, in between the beginning of my career, and then I would say Insight was another huge one for me. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And you talked about Justified. Natalie Z was the star of Insight, and she was on Justified for all those years.
Justified was good.
And I put that movie together on a shoestring, and all of those actors basically came and helped me out. Mostly friends of mine. The only guy that
Sean Patrick Flattery as well, or
Sean was the only guy that I cast through a casting director because I hadn't met him yet. We've become great pals because he's a wonderful guy. He's a great guy and a great actor. But Christopher Lloyd had done a film for me called Call of the Wild 3D, a family film that we shot out in Montana. And I said, and he made a lot of money on that one, and but he made a lot of money on that one. And we became friends, and I said, I don't know if you've seen Insight, but we shot Insight and in 15 days, and Chris actually only worked one day. So he basically gave me that day for scale and helped me out.
Wow.
And I had met Adam Baldwin and Natalie Z through somebody else, and all those people that ended up, Mark McClure. There's a lot of cameos in there from a lot of name actors.
Is that a lot of helping out then in the industry? Like when you watch a movie and there's like a pretty big name in a movie and they only have like a 4 or 5 minute role, is that sometimes, like the actor kind of helping out the director or writer, or they happen to be around? Like, does that happen a lot?
Well, it does happen a lot. I mean, it's either they're helping out or they're, picking up a paycheck, or they really love the project,
So it does happen.
It happens. It does happen. I was extremely passionate about Insight. I love that script, and I was really glad that we got to make it. And I felt like it came out really good. I'm not 100% proud of anything that I've made. There's always things I wish I could change or redo.
Well, you're a perfectionist, and I respect that.
Well, thank you. I settle for a lot less than perfection often. I mean, that's
yeah. But you're always trying. No, I meant it more like you're always trying. Like when I make this show too, I'm always like, even though it does really well, or we get a lot of views, we do well. I'm always trying. Like I'm not satisfied, or I'm always like want to tweak things. Like there's a lot of that,
And I really am proud of Insight. I mean, it's kind of like, big, really important films in my career. I mean, Insight, and now, and then Call of the Wild 3D was a really huge step for me. That had a really nice run and did really well. And then and not to take anything away, I've done this long run of TV movies, or movies that have ended up on television for A&E that play on Lifetime, and those have allowed me to grow so much as a filmmaker and to meet so many great people, and they've been really successful. Yeah. So I'm so grateful for every opportunity I've ever had.
And you said you've directed over. Was it over 20 feature films? I
think I have to go back and count, but I think Justice is number 25.
Okay, so my question to you, because we'll wrap it up soon, but my question to you is, there's going to be a lot of things about directing that you like, but is there something specific about directing that maybe would kind of surprise people that you love? Like, if there's one component, specific little thing about directing a movie that you love the most? Because I'll give an example. Robert Lieberman, who came on my show, who directed All I Want for Christmas, The Expanse, which is on Sci-Fi, directed a few episodes of that, and Mighty Ducks 3, D3, said that one of his favorite things is kind of the whole thing that he gets to see it live. Like, everyone gets to see it in the movie theaters, but he gets to see it live. And he was really passionate about that. So I'm wondering if you have a specific thing.
Well, it's definitely it's a question that I just can't give you a direct answer to.
No problem.
But what I like, so I love I love actors. I love making things come to life. I love all of the obvious, all the whole process that's involved in making a movie, from prep through post through actually seeing it with an audience, But I would say the thing that I like most about filmmaking, which in my job most of the time it's directing, is the camaraderie. that when you're on the set, working together with people that have just the goal of making the best movie they can. And just the camaraderie. It's kind of like if you were, when you're a kid and you have a group of best friends and you're doing a project together, and that energy, that thing that happens, the days fly by. You're not at work, just that excitement and that camaraderie, that working together, that I love. Like I live to be on, if I'm not playing with my kids or hanging out with my wife and, doing family stuff, I want to be on set. I just love being on set and working together with people.
Well, I mean, I've always said it too. Like, do it with, like, you have to have passion to be able to. In my opinion, you will only be very good at something if you do it with passion. That's always been my thing. Like, if you're just kind of forcing it and kind of saying, okay, I want to make movies for the rest of my life, but you're not really into it and you're not giving it all, the products won't be to its greatest like potential. Right,
and it's not to quote, but in the spirit of the now late Tom Petty said something like, find something that you love and make that your job, and then you'll be a happy person. Mm-hmm. Those aren't his exact words, but something like that.
No, absolutely. But it sounds like I want to have more directors on the show because I love your, like, the passion that you display is like unbelievable. Like you could tell that you're just overjoyed with like everything you've done with Justice and Insight, and it's awesome. So I thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about it, Richard.
I appreciate it.
So Blu-ray release coming out soon for Justice?
The Blu-ray on Justice is October 17th. It's on all the digital platforms, and as long as we're talking about things that we're excited about, in this year I finished I've been a singer-songwriter my whole career as well, and play songs in a bunch of movies. And then this last year, I got to make my album and finish my album. And it
awesome!
Here, and it's on iTunes and Spotify and streaming everywhere. It's the album's called Double Life, Richard Gabai and the Czechs, and I had the great honor of recording it in the Glenn Campbell's family studio, and his son Cal Campbell produced my record, and it's been a very, very lucky year.
Really cool. A lot of
check out the album if you get a chance as well, and I hope everyone enjoys Justice. And I'm really grateful for this chance you've given me to be on your show.
Oh no, anytime. We'll have you back anytime you want to be back. It's awesome. Well, yeah, Justice is on Blu-ray October 17th. You could make sure you catch that because I'm going to be watching that soon. I'm really excited for it because it seems like it's going to be a very cool Western flick with an amazing cast like we talked about. Make sure you also check out Richard's new album. All the info will be in our video description. So there's going to be a lot of clicks and links that they're going to be able to click on. So don't worry about that, Richard. We got you covered. And
don't worry about these things.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Richard. Thank you for everyone that tuned in. This has been Popternative. You can catch previous episodes of Popternative on our website, popternative.com/podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. Be sure to follow and like everything on Richard's social media. That will also be in the event description, in the video description. Thank you all, and we hope you enjoyed this interview. And until next time, this is Richard Gabai and PD Beats signing off.
Thank you for tuning in to Popternative. Make sure to check out our past episodes of Popternative on YouTube. Be sure to like Popternative on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.